Out of our constrictions. How? Jill shook 'em.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Libby O'Kane, Events and Visitor Services Manager for the Fowler Museum at UCLA. Thank you for joining us today or tonight, depending on where it is you're tuning in from around the world. The Fowler is honored to present today's program, Curator's Choice, African American Vernacular Flags in Los Angeles. Patrick Polk, the Fowler Senior Curator of Latin American and Caribbean Popular Arts, will share his research on the history of African American vernacular flags and highlight key aspects of their creation and use. This program complements our current exhibition of Asafo Flags from Ghana, their cultural, political, and social significance, and their role in contemporary Fonte life. Patrick A. Polk is the lecturer for the UCLA Center for the Study of Religion, and his research interests include material religion and visual piety, religion and healing, popular religion in North and Latin America, and African diasporic sacred arts. He has curated such Fowler exhibitions as Botanica Los Angeles, Latino popular religious art in the City of Angels, Sinful Saints and Saintly Sinners at the Margins of the Americas, and Ashe Bahia, the Power of Art in an Afro-Brazilian Metropolis. I have just a few quick technical bits of housekeeping before we begin. Once the screen sharing begins, I encourage you to click View Options and then go to side-by-side mode, so the video feed doesn't cover any of the presentation. If you have any questions during our program, please submit them through the question and answer function found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can submit and upvote entries that you would like to be considered to be answered at the end of the program. All right, that's all from me. Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you for that introduction, and welcome everybody. I'm really glad that you're able to spend this time with us today. I'm looking forward to going through the topic with you today. So I'm going to start the PowerPoint here in just a second, but also following up on what Libby was saying about question and answers, I do encourage you to submit questions through the Q&A function, and I will keep my eye on those. And as questions come up, if I can find a way to answer them as I'm going, I will try my best to do that. Or otherwise, we'll have some time at the end where I can address any questions that I haven't been able to address yet. So again, thank you all for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and start now. All right, so as Libby introduced me, as a researcher, as a curator, I'm very interested in particular in material expressions of belief and material expressions of ideology. And some of my research, certainly as a curator, has focused on flag and banner traditions within the context of the African diaspora, whether that be in Haiti in particular, or here in the United States, which I'm going to focus on today. And so my goal here, while we have this time together, is I'm going to go through, take sort of a historical perspective on African American banner traditions, and then move it into the more contemporary period, looking in particular at one specific case study in Los Angeles of the creation and use of vernacular flags that are understood to represent African American collectivity. Again, any questions you might have, please throw them into the Q&A. I really love that to get that kind of feedback as I go along. So anything I say that raises a question, anything you would like more clarification on or me to expand on, I'm absolutely open to that. All right, so why are we having this presentation today? Well, again, as Libby said, this is part of the programming for our current exhibition, Art, Honor, and Ridicule, Fonte Asafo Flags from Southern Ghana. If you haven't yet had an opportunity to go and see this exhibition, I urge you to do that when you get a chance, because it exemplifies an art form, in this case from Southern Ghana, of creating banners that represent social units, collectivities, and It's a beautiful presentation of the artistry of flag making, but more importantly, the symbolic imagery, the implications, the meanings for historical, social, political, military, economic that get sewn into a flag, which is then displayed in ritual settings. And so again, take an opportunity to see that show if you haven't yet. If you have already seen it, hey, come on back into the museum and take another look. Also, I want to do a shout out to an upcoming exhibition that we have, which is on Merland Constant, who is a Haitian bead artist who has worked very significantly within the tradition of sacred banners, drapeau Vodou, within the Haitian Vodou tradition. And that's being curated by Catherine Smith and Jerry Philogène. And it's amazing, going to be an amazing show. And that will open fairly early in the coming year. And again, another opportunity for us to think about art and banner traditions and the way in which folks construct incredibly important ritual objects. All right. I don't know. I wasn't even thinking about today, the date of today when I was going to be talking about flags. I'm not quite sure how I missed the fact that I would be doing this on election day, but it seems really appropriate as I get to wear my I voted sticker. I don't have it on me right now for some reason, but with a little flag on it. And so I want to take a minute for us to kind of think about the ways in which flags work. The meanings that are embedded in and are enlivened through the use of banners and flag and banner imagery. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the sort of the fundamental functions or implications or uses when we think about flags, whether it be the Old Glory, the national banner of the United States, or if we think about military standards or other kinds of flag traditions with which we might be familiar. But there's some fundamental uses there, and these all become important as I go through and talk about African American vernacular flag traditions. First and foremost, of course, as institutional emblems, as the material representation of collectivities, right? This is our flag. That is our banner. That represents us. And then in keeping with that, we can talk about the banner, the flag, as a symbol of authority, right? That this represents leadership, political structure. The banners used to frame key figures in institutional organizations, right? Whether it's flags as a backdrop to a political candidate or flags as markers on Air Force One. It's just like, okay, this cues us into somebody that we need to pay attention to. And then more largely as markers of identity, that this is our flag. This might indicate our sense of nationality, but also religiosity, certainly regionality, whether this is our state flag, or other kinds of organizations that trade unions, Masonic orders, a variety of ways in which we represent notions of who we are. And also this will become important in a minute, who we aren't through banners. In their use, flags and flag imagery can, as they should be, follow the flag, right? Be with the flag as a call to action to say, look, right, here we are. Let's put our sense of collective identity, let's put our ethics, our values, our morals, our patriotism, however you want to sort of think about those ideological factors, right? Now put it into action, rally around the flag, defend the flag, and as a general call to action. And then more specifically, the banner as rallying point to demarcate a specific space, right? Here is where we're going to gather, right? Come to the flag, follow the flag. And then back to a sort of a more broad function, and one that is certainly also very relevant for what I'm going to go through today and the rest of the presentation, is the banner as a mode of resistance, a way of challenging authority, as an emblem that can problematize systems and modes of, structures of inequality, to be sure. All right, so just again, flags are by their very nature multivocal. They do a lot of work at the same time. I think again, if we reflect on the Asafo flag exhibition that's currently up at the Fowler, right? These are the emblems of social organizations. They become mechanisms for, again, highlighting presence and ideals. They also become a mechanism for tension, of expressing tension, of ways of competing with other groups who have their own flags. So again, a lot of work that potentially is done by fabric attached to poles or otherwise displayed and carried in public places. All right, so when we talk about African American vernacular flags, one of the things that I want us to highlight early on is the situation historically in the United States, certainly from the period of racial bondage, of race-based enslavement, and a dilemma with the national standard, which the national banner, which is on one hand, from one set of demographics, the banner represents freedom, liberation, independence, all of these fundamental notions of ideological perspectives on the United States and our movement from colonial possession to independent democracy. On the other side of that, of course, certainly during the era of racial enslavement, right, there's an immediate problem, right? It's like, well, wait a second, is this the banner of freedom for everybody, or is this a symbol of liberation, of independence, of self-autonomy only for a few, right? And patently that was the case. And so within the abolitionist movement, the anti-slavery movement, folks like Frederick Douglass, others use the image of the American flag to say, look, right, to point out a problem, to point out that it in fact isn't representative of an entirety of a populace. That's in that sense, that's not our flag. That flag doesn't serve the same purpose for us. It doesn't work the same way as that banner does for other demographics, right? And again, this is central to sort of the history of African American vernacular flags. In other words, well, if not that flag, if not that banner, then what banner? And so we can see in a number of instances, certainly from the colonial era through the era of enslavement into emancipation, that African American collectives, whether again be Prince Hall Masonic lodges, whether it be church organizations, that African Americans communities develop traditions of banners, our flags, that representing identity in a very specific kind of ways. Some of the most notable ones that I highlight here, of course, is during the Civil War with the establishment of the colored regiments in the battle with the South. African American regiments carried banners, regimental standards that were reflective of Black military presence, Black military collectivity. And so regiments, either banners for the 127th Regiment from Pennsylvania or the Massachusetts 54th Regiment, which was certainly highlighted in the film Glory, went into battle carrying standards that highlighted Black identity. And this is really important because that's something that at a national level, you don't really get until this time period, where it's like, yeah, these are Black regiments fighting for the preservation of the United States, And in concert with the standard of the United States, the national flag, regimental banners for colored troops going into battle. And right, with a full understanding, if we look at the motto for this regimental standard, right, is painted onto the silk at the top, is "We will prove ourselves men." I mean, this is a huge statement. This is a huge statement in terms of African American civil rights, of incorporation into the civic body of the United States, where we've already experienced legal renderings, legal decisions that rendered African Americans less than human, as less than full citizen. And so the use of these banners was clearly understood that this is about not just representing presence and again, collective action and identity, but also that these were standards that were challenging certain prevailing notions of race in the United States. Following the Civil War, with the end of the hostilities, and particularly the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, this image I have on this particular page is perhaps a little fanciful. It was created for a French journal, but I think it captures something really important. If not just the actual use of the Emancipation Proclamation as a banner itself, as a flag of liberty, as a standard for African American community building, moving north, moving west, of whole new ranges of possibility that were facilitated by the end of racial bondage. But also in this is important is that a continuing movement towards possibilities of collective identity, and that in which banners can be important, establishing new social organizations, new institutions, representing oneself through the symbolic potential of banners. And from the late 1900s, but particularly as we move into the 20th century, the earliest decades of the 20th century, and I'm going to give you some reason, a real reason in a minute, why around 1900, moving into the first quarter, and particularly of the 20th century, there was real dynamic energy dedicated to creating flags that represent either important African American civic leaders, such as Booker T. Washington, or as there are a number of Martin Luther King flags that have been created. So banners highlighting key figures who, for a variety of reasons, either as racial heroes, as community leaders, and also figures who aren't necessarily getting their due recognition at a national level. And so what really kicks off again in the early 20th century is the development of African American vernacular flags, or at the very least they start to get attention in the media, whether that's in African American focused newspapers and journals, or more broadly in local national media. And so there were people all across the United States who were designing, African Americans, coming up with designs for racial banners, for African American banners, to be used either in church settings, to be used in parades, whether it be Emancipation Day parades, 4th of July parades, other kinds of parades, that folks were very busy trying to create a banner, right, that sort of for us, by us, if I can borrow that terminology, saying it's like, yeah, here is a flag for African Americans. Now, the reason that this becomes, again, very important, I will get at in a minute. But right, what comes out of that is the need to create banners that reflect African American collective presence, but also experience. And so the banners that are being created, and some of these may be very familiar to you, I'm just going to highlighting a couple here, is not only flags that represent community organizations in general, but also flags that highlight crucial issues, social issues, flags that contest the certain circumstances. So the NAACP's lynching flag, which flew certainly for many years at the early, in the early 20th century, as a mode of recognizing, saying, it's like, look, here's a problem, that Black people are being murdered in the United States, and people aren't paying attention, right? These things, or some people aren't paying attention. This is not getting into the news. This is not being reported, right? But the flag highlights it. It's a visible marker that no, we're watching, we are noting, and it is a call to action. It's a rallying point. Is to say, it's like, look, something needs to be done. This needs to be addressed, and so that way of challenging social order, challenging injustice, oppression. The Black Panther Party in the 1960s into the 1970s created a number of banners. Probably the most famous are the Free Huey banners that were particularly used in protest to the incarceration of Huey Newton. Right, one of the central leaders of the Black Panther Party, and again, a way of taking notions of identity to the street and operationalizing them in resistance, in opposition to structures of authority. The use of flag imagery. This is a mural that used to be very visible on Crenshaw Boulevard here in Los Angeles. Again, using the image of an African American flag, or Pan-African flag more specifically, as a backdrop, right, as a central feature to calls for social justice, right? Is that you have an African American whose incarceration and death sentence was being contested, and it was saying, look, here, this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and using that flag imagery to construct a sense of, again, collective identity is central to this. All right, now I want to back up a little bit, as I said, and come back to the early 1900s, and to really key in on a critical reason that African Americans across the United States felt the call to create vernacular flags, to create banners that represented African Americans in general, a banner to present, to carry in parades, a banner to mount in one's home, a banner that is, again, for us. And the central thing that happened was truly this song, this vaudeville, inherently racist piece of music and lyrics by Healin' and Health, which highlighted something crucial in the United States in terms of flags. And what the song is highlighting is that at the time in the civic culture of the United States, right? Understand, about 1900, this is when St. Patrick's Day is starting to become truly an American holiday, and that's operationalized by parades. Irish Americans are organizing parades, activities, political rallies, and at these rallies, you're finding a conjunction of the United States national banner and Irish flags. Irish, the harp, and they think the Irish flags for Irish American identity and American identity. And the play of flags is melding those two together. The same thing, the same kinds of thing is happening, maybe a little later, with Columbus Day and Italian Americans constructing notions of identity. And so what the song was pointing out was it was creating an idea of, or sort of reinforcing an idea of African Americans as people without a history, people without a place. This really racist notion of tabula rasa, empty slate, that was often used to continue the minoritization of peoples of African descent, right? They don't, this idea of no heritage, no identity other than that identity by the assigned to them by sort of the racist anti-black structure of the United States at the time. And so, all right, this song becomes immensely popular in the United States. And it has, again, a number of implications, some of which, one which you can see here, is that 1906, you start to see postcards like this one, again, inherently racist, stereotypical, but playing on this idea that African Americans don't have something that is analogous to a national or collective identity. So Healing and Health song is saying, oh, they don't have a flag, right? And again, in the most racist kinds of ways. The Irish have a flag, the Germans have the flag, the British have a flag that is their rallying point, right? Is their shared marker of heritage, common interest, and collective organization. And again, in the United States, unionist parades, fraternal parades, holiday parades in the United States were really featuring these ethnic or national banners as key points. All right, and so in this, like this, right, you have somebody coming out sort of even increasing the mocking of African American collective identity by putting, again, vile racist tropes that would sadly continue to be familiar and harnessed by some. Again, it's saying, oh yeah, again, is making it an object of ridicule. Right, there's ridicule. Now, again, think about this in a way in terms of a connection to the Asafo Flag exhibition that's up right now. That ridicule in the title is like using that tradition in this case with the Asafo institutions in Ghana, using flag imagery to sort of make fun of their counterparts or folks to which they have certain rivalries. And this is, of course, in that idea of mockery in a particular racist profile, let me use that term, here in the United States, right? And so again, here's what's happening. So this stuff is proliferating in the United States in the first part of the 20th century, that first decade, that African Americans are being inundated with racial imagery, racial messages, mockery about flags, about not having a banner. And so the natural response to that is, okay, well, let's get one. Let's create a flag. And so again, you have folks across the United States at the very much local levels, generally community level, individual call to action, say, we got to get a flag. We need a banner. Let's shut them up. Frankly, let's stop this crap. All right. And the most notable of these and the most lastingly influenced folks doing this, of course, is Marcus Garvey and the development of the Pan-African flag, and Garvey himself specifically mentioned this song, that Healing and Health song, as a primary factor in the development of this banner, which now you can see it or variations of it all over the United States. In fact, globally, it becomes a global banner of Black organization, of Black community, of Black collective identity. And for Garvey, it was just like, all right, you're going to mock African Americans, you're going to mock Black people for not having a unifying banner. All right, here you go. Here it is. Here's one right here. Got it right here. All right, we're done. Now we have a banner, and that banner, of course, being clearly worked into a set of ideals of a shared understanding of Blackness, not as set apart and hierarchized as a lower position in a racist hierarchy, but instead, right, from Garvey, it's like, no, this is a unifying banner, right? This is an emblem of collective unity across Africa, across the diaspora, and that this flag is our, right, these colors, this is our blood, this is our light, this is the land, this is the color of, in other words, as a valorization of racialized identity, of point of origin, of homeland, and of inherent shared blood, of lineage. And again, he's doing this purposefully as a counterpoint to that song. The banner is adopted in 1918, and it has been understood under a lot of different names, a lot of different terms. Some people just call it RBG, others very much the Garvey or the Garveyite flag, African liberation flag, and on and on. So now in Garvey's understanding, this banner was Pan-African. Garvey spoke very specifically about all African people in the globe, where this became an emblem for their inherent connectedness. Others that build on this color palette, this idea of this banner, some make it more specific. So you will have the red, black, and green in some folks' later designs talk about it specifically as the African American flag. Or they might take the colors, the red, black, and green, and use that as the color palette for what otherwise would be the Stars and Stripes, the banner of the United States. So a lot of different variations in this. Becomes central to American popular culture, whether it be in music or a variety of other contexts. The bumper music, we started the music for today, as you were waiting for the thing to start, was from Funkadelic's One Nation Under a Groove. And certainly in the 1970s, as the versions of the African American banner, the Garveyite banner, become more and more popular, you had arts creators playing with the idea of it, playing with the potentiality of it. And so where Funkadelic on album covers, right, they're riffing off of important flag moments in the United States history. So the U.S. Marines planting the Stars and Stripes on Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima, right? This kind of gets reworked into a Afrofuturist African-American funk music framework for One Nation Under a Groove, and also for which the Parliament, Funkadelic, the musicians also created their own flag. You can see that multicolored flag in there is also becomes a banner that they use in concerts and other places. Or also another album, Uncle Jam Wants You, right? They reference the famous pose by Huey Newton of the Black Panthers as an act of resistance, and they incorporated into it with their One Nation Under a Groove flag. Now, the main point I'm trying to make here, sort of showing this again, is that by the time we're moving into the late 20th century and into the 21st century, vernacular African American flags are all over the place. They're all over the place. They're being referenced in clothing, in fashion, in music, popular music contexts, at political rallies, in the development of African American holidays like Kwanzaa and so on. Is that it tends to start at a very grassroots level, but then they build sort of to a real clear presence and impact. What I want to do with the rest of my time here, and I'm just going to, just the last few minutes here, is I want to highlight a activism, a flag-based or flag accentuated, African-American flag accentuated activist tradition or series or just activism by Mr. Peoples, John Peoples, who has since passed away. But Mr. Peoples was very closely associated with the reparations movement in Los Angeles and other Black African-American activist engagements. And what Mr. Peoples, one of the things that he became particularly well known for was setting up flag displays in conjunction with reparations movement, information and or gathering attention for it. And so he would take medians in South Los Angeles, whether it be on Central or Broadway, and he would set up his signs, and he would set out banners and information table, and just to, as a rallying point, as a way to make a social justice statement. And and he would participate in parades. He was very visually present in using African American vernacular flags as part of his activism. And he was very clear. And this is Mr. Peoples in the hat, sitting on the parking side of again being present, and he used incredibly visual, engaging imagery, not only the red, black, and green, both in signage and in banners. He also put up effigies of people who had been lynched, again, hearkening back to the NAACP banners of a man was lynched today. And again, he was very clear. His goal was to get people's attention because people needed to be educated. People needed to be educated about a history which he felt was being erased, that was not historical realities that were not being addressed. And for him, again, the flag was central to presenting a collective identity, a collective history, and asking for redress, for reparations. And again, he was dedicated to it. It was his labor. It was a result, as he described it, of life experience, of having been as a youth as a young Black man in the United States, of having his life threatened by people through racial violence, of understanding and recognizing the impact of inequality on Black communities. And so it's hard to tell in the picture here, but he wore a necklace of chains and to hearken to a history of that, again, from the perspective he presented, that isn't over, it's not finished, right? Enslavement and its ramifications that's not closed. That chapter's not closed until reparations are made, right? That these are things, that these are histories that are not, right? They don't rest. They don't rest until there's redress. And so again, his public presence, his persona, and his use of flags were directed at making people see this. He worked closely with Rory Flynn, and Rory Flynn, an African-American man who his part in this was to design, again, a vernacular flag, which he called the People's Flag, in honor, right, recognizing Mr. Peoples, John Peoples, who was doing this activism. And so what Rory did was he gave his take, his perspective on the Garveyite flag, the red, black, the green, black, and red, black, and green. And what he did is he put in the outline of Africa as homeland, as center of cultural history, and then added the reparations now. And he would sell these banners at where Mr. Peoples had sites set up, or frequently he would sell them at swap meets and other sales along Crenshaw Boulevard near 54th Avenue by Slauson, as again sort of a putting it on the streets. And so, and again, it was the goal, as he said, as he said to me, right, that there's a cause here, that there's a cause, right? Whether the Red Cross, the Muslims, the communists, everybody has their flag, right? They have to have their symbol. And so his goal was to provide that symbol to be central to the reparations movement, right? Which again is obviously an ongoing political discourse, an ongoing activist discourse in the United States, is recognizing multi-generational implications and legacies at economic, social, health and well-being, right? That these are things that need to be addressed. And so this was an opportunity to create a vernacular flag to play a role in that. And so again, in the color palette of red, black, and green, and with banners or without banners, Mr. Peoples again took it to the street with the idea of making people see this and reflect on it. So in addition to using banners and signage, he also created what he called slave ships. And they were trailers that he would fashion as ships. And then he would tow them around Los Angeles, and he would park at very specific places. Here in the photograph here, he's parked in front of Maxine Waters' former congressional district office. Right, again, it's like, again, he trying to get the attention not just of passersby, but also of political representatives to say, look, this cause needs action. And so again, and he referred to these as reparations, now Black Holocaust slave ships. And he had two at the height of when he was in the late 90s, early 2000s, when he was really, again, active. He would, again, park the slave ships in prominent places, fundamentally in South Los Angeles within the Black community. And he also used them as educational opportunities. And so what he would include were printed out Xeroxes with historical statistics, things related to the period of the enslavement of peoples of African descent, also statistics and things related to issues of health and well-being in the African American community. He would have flyers as a goal. Ultimately it was to educate people. And it was the ship, what were understood for him is to a way to get a reality across. And the flags as markers, again, as rallying points, as visible evidence of collective identity, as a response to the sense of the absence of collectivity and the absence of, in terms of the ship, of the silence, right? In other words, the ship breaks the silence. The flag symbolizes those who had the experience. All right, so one last slide. And again, two last slides. Again, couple last slides, reparations. Now, again, highlighting the call. And in these two slides, you see Rory Flynn's reparations flag, and then you see the more standard Garveyite Pan-Africanist banner. And the last thing I just want to highlight again here is for us to think about, the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black Lives Matter banner, right? The reason for it, the necessity to have to make people see, the need for folks to realize that there's a problem on the one hand, that they have to say things that you shouldn't have to say, but the reality of the need to it, and in terms of particularly representing collective experience in an ongoing history of anti-Black institutional realities, of racism as it working at both the local, the national level, the vulnerability of Black bodies to violence predicated on, promoted by anti-Blackness, right? Now, these are the same reasons for the Garveyite flag, why Garvey created the red, black, and green. These are the same reasons that Mr. Peoples and Rory Flynn were creating the Reparations Now banners. These are the same kinds of things that have spurred individuals and groups across the United States to create flags. And right, this is right. We can expect that this is will be a continuing tradition. Okay, I'm done. So I don't see any questions. I hope that doesn't mean what I said has made no sense. Again, I'm trying to give you a taste of what is a very broad tradition in the United States. So again, if anybody has any questions, comments, ask for clarification, I would be happy to engage in that right now.
Well, I don't think we have any questions. So,
okay.
But thank you so much for sharing your work with us today. It's been captivating to learn about the use of African-American flags and flag imagery in Southern California. I want to invite everyone to stop by our galleries to learn about the use of vernacular flags in Ghana in our current exhibition, Art, Honor, and Ridicule, Fonte Asafo Flags from Southern Ghana. The program has been recorded. It'll be available immediately on our Facebook, and in a few days, it will be uploaded to the Fowler website for you to revisit and share. We hope you'll join us for our next program. Details can be found on the closing slide. Have a great week, everyone.